Tommy Robinson?
Yeah.
You know who he is?
I know who he is. I haven't been following anything recent with him, though.
He is, I call him the British version of Alex Jones. Like,
Come on, Viva.
Well, in terms
worked
of how he's been demonized. Like, I remember what I thought I knew of Tommy Robinson back in 2018.
Right.
Some far right, the EDL is like the most verboten term.
Nationalist, right? That's what they
far right nationalist,
Yeah.
anti-Islam, and you know some critique might be legitimate, but bottom line, he's the most demonized man in Europe and right up there with Alex Jones. And if people get to know him, you know that he's wrongly demonized. So Tommy Robinson was just sentenced to 18 months in a British prison for contempt of court.
Wow.
And the story is amazing. And this is now the second or third time he's being jailed for contempt. Back in 2018, you remember when he was video recording the grooming gangs? Well, they called grooming gangs, but they're actually sexual assault gangs.
Yep.
And he was recording in public as they were approaching the courthouse, allegedly in violation of a court order. And he was asking them questions, like, how does it feel? Yada. And then he was arrested, detained, convicted, and sentenced to, I don't know, it was like 13 months in jail within 5 hours. So he gets arrested the day of and then sentenced to 13 months in jail. Got out after 3 months, was in solitary torture. Subsequently, there was a story of this Syrian refugee in the UK who was allegedly the victim of a racist, white supremacist attack, waterboarded because some other white kid poured a bottle of water on his face. The video went viral, exactly like Nicholas Salmon's video went viral here. And media, politicians were saying this is anti-Islamic, anti-refugee, anti-immigrant. The kid receiving death threats. There's a big scandal to it. Tommy Robinson comes out and says, look, I'm an independent journalist and I've been looking into this, and the story is not at all what is being reported. The alleged victim might have been making sexual assault jokes about or references, comments about the kid's brother, and this was retaliation. Tommy does some digging, and according to him, and not even according to him, he puts together a documentary called Silenced, where he has secret recording of teachers saying they were paid to be quiet about the incident. Other teachers saying this kid had a rap sheet in school, allegedly had a knife, had a screwdriver, allegedly assaulted girls. You had the girls saying they were assaulted by him. Tommy Robinson gets sued for defamation and gets a wild, like €1 million or whatever the currency that they're using, £1 million judgment against him. And he's forbidden from repeating the allegedly defamatory statements. He's forbidden from releasing the documentary called Silenced, which gets leaked to the internet. And bottom line, he went full throttle and said, I'm not only, this is out there, I should never have shut my mouth the first time. I'm going to publish this documentary. I'm going to make it known to everybody. And they then, found him in contempt of court, wanton willful breach again, and sentenced him to 18 months in jail. From what I understand, according to Ezra Levant, much of it is in solitary confinement. But speaking of the receipts, Tommy Robinson made the statements, but it wasn't as though he knew they were lies. It's not even as though they were obvious lies or even lies in the first place. He had evidence to support it. If we could show a couple of clips from the documentary, which is now, to the chagrin of the court, been viewed by 50 million people, give or take, or at least 50 million views, give or take. We got one of the clips coming up here.
Not very likable, really.
No.
About what he were going to do to sisters and what have you.
Tony Bailey.
To Bailey and to others.
Oh, and to others.
But not a very nice boy.
When you say, what was he going to do to the sisters?
Well, he told Bailey he was going to rape them.
Told Bailey he was going to rape a sister. And I tried to argue that it was in the public's interest for him to know the truth about Jamal. And that's
He was just retaliating.
Yeah.
Which most people do if somebody threatens their sisters.
Yeah.
And while the UK...
So Tom, this was my vlog analysis of this, but so Tommy gets this stuff on video and puts together the documentary. The court says you can't present this. The court issues as a matter of fact, judicial fact, it was lies. And the judge in this case, or at least the judge in the defamation case, says, I don't believe any of the witnesses who you got on video who came to court to testify, and I believe the alleged victim, the Syrian boy, who is a confirmed demonstrable liar, at least according to court records, and he's going to jail for 18 months. And my ultimate takeaway from this is, if you want to know what the future of America would look like under a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz regime, where they would criminalize disinformation and you'd have to go to the government and the courts to know what you can and cannot say, look no further than the UK.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, he went to jail exclusively because he released the documentary.
It got leaked.
It got leaked, and then he embraced it, and then he published it. He broadcast it in, I want to say, Trafalgar Square. He embraced it, and he said, "Look, in the documentary preface or the prelogue, whatever, before the documentary starts, he says, 2 years ago I shut my mouth. I was scared into silence, and I'm not going to be now." And he embraced it.
Yeah.
I mean, by the letter of the law, he was in violation of the court order, which is contempt. The issue of the court order is, on the one hand, it's obscene. It makes, as a matter of judicial fact, what is a contradicted fact, or at least a disputed fact, or if not an outright lie, in order to preserve this narrative that was this Syrian refugee was a poor victim of a white boy who was waterboarding him by pouring a bottle of water on his face. And 18 months. And from what Ezra Levant on Rebel News is saying, it's in solitary. Because Tommy Robinson is no fan of the British Muslim community or the British prison community. My underlying fear, my underlying thought is that they're putting him in jail in the hopes that he ends up like the guy who put the ham sandwich in front of a mosque. That's to say, dead.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, for me, that's gonna be, because I don't believe anything that Tommy Robinson said. I've been doing research on him because he was being floated around to talk to him. He's bankrolled. I don't, I think he might.
Bankroll by whom?
I can't say, but he might.
What do you mean you can't say?
I can say it because I've read that people accuse him of being a Zionist shill and bankrolled by, I don't know, Israel or the IDF, however you want to qualify that.
But the thing is, if he makes jail alive, because if you see I did a segment on this, if you see the population in jail in the UK, is crazy, trending Muslim. And I must say here, I have the same distaste for Muslim, invading Europe, because it's a full-on invasion right now. But what I'm going to say, I don't know about this guy,
I'll feel so I deal with a lot of these comments where some people say he's a IDF shill or he's a paid agitprop.
And it's fine if he is.
Well, but that's the thing. Like I say, for the matter of this discussion, I say okay, I'll take for granted. I disagree with you, but I'll agree with you. Fine, he's paid by Israel. Okay, I don't believe in locking up agitprops either for their words.
I hate that as well. Especially in the UK, it's been brutal. If you've seen the last week, this is one of the cases. There's 5 active cases right now of people being locked up. Matter of fact, I forget the name of the foundation. They are putting money towards the defense of people that are being prosecuted by the UK. The police is going to houses, house by house, for comments on the internet, and they have this foundation where they...
Kelly, can we bring up the other one? It's going to be a guy wearing a white wig. I mean, just as an illustration, this is a judge. We watched this a while back, issuing a sentence against someone who posted on social media something in relation to a place where migrants were being housed, and then there was some violence in that people were throwing rocks, allegedly. And this guy was sentenced to, I believe it was the better part of 3 years. But when you watch the judge issuing his ruling, I mean, it's something out of a Kafka novel. It was in a tweet. It's like... You're watching something out of 1984 where there's cold, dead eyes of a guy who is stealing your life because of words that you put out on social media. And if anybody wants to genuinely appreciate the beauty and the God-given importance of the First and Second Amendment, you'll watch what happens when you don't have it. This guy's stealing someone's life for words on a Facebook post.
Wow.
You have been committed for sentence, having pleaded guilty to an offence of publishing written material which is threatening, abusive, or insulting.
Or insulting.
Intending thereby to stir
Crazy.
up racial hatred.
Racial
The
hate.
context of your offending is that it arises out of the civil unrest and disorder in many parts of the United Kingdom. On the night of the 2nd and 3rd of August...
He goes on to sentence the guy to 18 months. I think it's 18. It was 30 months and then less. Sometime. Reduced.
Imagine having
Which
your
is
life
crazy.
ended by a guy dressed like that.
He looks like medieval.
You're sent to jail by a guy in a wig.
Yeah.
The other thing that I don't know if I can say, but he was recently in a place where he couldn't be extradited. Why coming back to the UK?
Right, to martyrize himself.
Well, I mean, look, I had Tommy on the channel a few times in the last year, and that was one of my questions. On the one, I mean, I think it's stupid. I would have not gone back, and Navalny chose to go back to Russia as well. Why? Maybe you think it's not going to happen. Maybe you think if it does happen, it's going to be the political wake-up call for the rest of the UK. But you imagine, you have that judge sending someone to jail for voicing discontent, what would it say, or insulting or abusive content, or offensive, because they're criticizing the consequences of British foreign or domestic policy.
And in general.
When I had Tommy on and he was explaining what was going on at these centers where people were protesting around, there were allegations of serious violence against vulnerable peoples occurring within or by people within these places. And so they're silencing anybody's ability to actually do it and sending them to jail for social media posts.
It's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse. And now Tommy is going to jail. And in his in closing, when we had him on, he says, "I'm going to go to jail. 50 million people will have watched my documentary Silence, and they'll know that the lie is a lie and that the government is continuing to push it. But meanwhile, he will be martyred for what will hopefully be an awakening for some people that might just fizzle out into nothing."
It'd be a very noble act, like very, very Christ-like to, put yourself out there, do that. I don't know. Like, I have all these questions about his character. I don't know anything about the bank rolling. Like, I have no sure proof. I don't know anything about his reasoning from leaving a place where he can't be extradited. I have no clue, but there's something that doesn't add up on my books.
Can you realize any of his merit, though, and what he's contributed, given the fact that,
100%.
think about how bad it is even here in a country that has all of these freedoms. We have a constitution that affords us all of these rights. Like, it's so much more restrictive in the UK, and he's one of the main voices that are really waking people up to a lot of the stuff that's happening, specifically with immigration, which we're now dealing with that here. We were just talking about it before the show started, that both of our visas literally are delayed / there's things that are happening.
There's so many people coming in.
Because there's so many illegal people coming in. Like, he's one of the main voices out there who are really highlighting these issues that are happening with immigration in Europe and the UK.
But I think Europe is beyond fixing. There's nothing we can do about it.
Split up the EU.
That won't do anything.
Well, I mean, they'll only save it east versus west. Many people would say that England, France, Italy, Spain Germany are beyond the point of no return, and maybe Poland and the more eastern parts, Slovakia can be.
Except Hungary.
But the thing is, Spain was past
during the
that
European
point, too.
Union, I think screwed everything up because it allowed cross-border transportation without having to check people. So if they stopped that practice, then I think they could slow the bleeding on this and reduce it eventually.
Once upon a time, Spain was beyond the point of no return, too. The Moors had expanded out of North Africa and taken over almost the entire thing. And then the Reconquista happened, they took it back, and the rest is history, for which the church is constantly condemned.
Biggest comeback in history.
Yeah. Look at the charge
wow.
against Tommy Robinson. Contempt of court. The real charge, the real crime that he committed is blasphemy. Because he slandered a religious figure by saying that this Syrian refugee teenager is actually a violent scumbag. And when you say that, you violate the sacred tenets of the modern religion, which is worship the third world, worship the foreigner, worship anyone who's not your
blasphemy?
people. No, I'm saying
not legal blasphemy.
It's
metaphorical
blasphemy.
Because the whole Olympic Committee should be jailed.
Yeah, the only reason they charged him with contempt of court on this for violating this court order is because this was blaspheming against the new religion, which says if you are a person in a majority white country, you must fall on your knees and worship the third world immigrants who are coming to replace you. And if you speak out against that, then that is akin to burning a crucifix in medieval Europe.
Well, first of all, it also highlights the lawfare, the consequences of lawfare. Everybody says, okay, you don't go to jail for a civil suit. All right, so they come in with lawfare to silence him on the defamation claim. Find him liable in a wildly corrupt court where he wasn't allowed to present his own evidence. And then they say, you owe the money now. Well, which is why I also think I don't put much stock in him being bankrolled by Israel, because I don't think the guy's got much money.
I would do that. If I was Israel, I would do that 100%.
Well, no, he gets that accusation. Everybody gets it if they're on the name.
Everyone gets it.
Everyone becomes.
I got it in this show.
Yeah, no, you're Mossad. I'm Mossad, but. He gets it because he's vocally supportive of Israel. He's more Zionistic than many Jews, and he's very critical of Islam. So I understand the critique, and I understand people who don't like him because of his support for Israel. Fine. But he's righteous in this. And they use the lawfare to get him, to shut him up, to bankrupt him. And then they use contempt, which is a quasi-criminal proceeding, to lock him up, knowing that they want him to be killed in jail.
You think he's going to get killed?
He survived the last time, but 18 months in solitary. If we bring up this tweet from Ezra Levant, 18 months in solitary will kill somebody. And he was, when I interviewed him, was recovering from the PTSD from the last stint in solitary, because they can't have him in the general population because people want to kill him.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's worth it? Like, I get, like, it is maybe a brave and noble thing to
definitely
do,
worth
martyring
it.
yourself,
Definitely
but
worth it.
couldn't he make more impact if he was able to be a little bit more careful and continue spreading his
You don't
message
achieve-
versus
you don't
being
achieve
locked up and
anything with
withheld
careful.
from the
Careful
public?
never achieved anything.
100%.
Do you get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's like a lot of people, they, you know, there's bits of people, some figures on the, you know, on the right in the US and abroad who have done similar
Nigel
things,
Farage,
like cancelled everywhere.
Nigel
You can't
Farage.
mention their name.
He's being too careful. And if you see Christopher Columbus, he was like, okay, boys, get in a ship. We don't know where we're going. Let's just cruise. And he got to a new world.
I will
But
tell you.
when has a martyr ever made a movement more since Jesus? When has a martyr ever made a movement more powerful? I can't think of a single example.
That is what
More
my,
powerful than Christianity.
there's-
I mean,
there's-
that's
No,
impossible.
I said since
George Floyd.
Since Jesus being a
Friggin-
martyr. When has a martyr
Yeah,
ever made a
Joe,
movement?
No,
Ha.
blessed George Floyd of the Sacred Fent
Yeah, but that-
suffocated
he
beneath the
didn't-
knee of a
didn't
cop.
martyr
Yeah,
himself.
that's not-
the
that's
question,
not-
the real question is like, what martyrs can you think of? I mean, who
had a
is the
bigger impact,
tank
yeah.
man? The guy who converted his car into a tank and drove it down the
the
streets?
The killdozer guy. Crap.
Killdozer.
What's
It
his name?
starts with an H. It has an H in it.
man.
But like,
The
this is why.
unreasonable or reasonable men who must do unreasonable
Absolutely.
things.
Now, my
What's that guy's name?
There's an expression in French that says "Pourquoi mourir pour une cause quand il y en a autant?" Why die for one cause while there are so many? And I know my dad would say, look, nobody remembers the martyr 10 years later, and you've sacrificed your only life on this earth to hopefully make a point that nobody's going to remember. You could do it in a smarter way and not overtly throw yourself on the rails. Maybe go a little bit along the lines of Elon Musk and bending a little bit to the demands of a corrupt Brazilian government so that he can hopefully change the minds of a Brazilian population versus go full take me out of Brazil and now 100, however many people live there, 100 million people?
In the UK?
In Brazil.
In Brazil?
Yeah, around
It's
that.
120. And so, you know, deny them of any access to any information. So there's a line to play. You don't want to just, you know, kill yourself for nothing and you don't want to live for nothing. So
Yeah.
But
Find the middle
seriously, though, I don't think we can think of a single example. Like Martin Luther King, his movement didn't get stronger after he died. Malcolm X,
Mahatma Gandhi.
yeah, his movement didn't get
Malcolm X. I
stronger.
mean, you think of the great ones. They didn't even martyr themselves. They were martyred.
Right, JFK, and because the people.
Well, JFK actually, he might have he was
Right.
martyred,
No, the
but
only
he,
thing-
he might have had a lasting impact on.
I think all that did was make his reputation better because people had a fond because at that time he kind of had a negative reputation. He might have not won a second term, but it's not like the only movement that got stronger is the movement of anti-government trust. But it's like the people aren't strong-willed enough to actually do something when they're pissed off about it. Like I don't think that people would have really done anything. Like, this is pessimistic, but I don't think people would have done anything if Trump was killed.
They would
They would ride a little bit, but
I think that might have been different, but yeah, they might have
hopefully, but
just cried and moved on. Who
Yeah.
was the Ruby Ridge Weaver or Seaver? It was Weaver.
yeah, Weaver.
And Weaver, his kid gets killed by the government, sacrificed, and there's a large population that will always remember that. But by and large,
That
Nothing
is
happened.
such an underrated story, and I have to disagree with you. And now I'm gonna flip and support Tony Robbins. I think I'm sorry. Like, I don't have to agree with myself all the time. I think what he's doing is commendable. I think the problem, it is like even
You bipolar?
No, I'm sorry, but
I think Umberto jumped to conclusions in the beginning because of your predisposition based on what you think of him as an Israeli asset. But now I think you understand a little better.
I will say this though: we never talked about Tommy Robinson or his documentary before this. We've never
covering it
dedicated
back
a segment to him.
in 2018 when he was sentenced. I was covering it because it made no sense from a legal perspective. Now that I understand politics has ruined law, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like, oh man, the Israelis, I'm gonna chill a little bit. They're so smart. Like, sorry, but the beeper thing, that was genius. I never seen anything like. I'm sorry, they bankroll a company. They put the beepers there. Like, it was the most surgical, like, intended thing.
You know what that is?
What
That's
is
the
it?
power
It's
of
brilliant.
No, it's the power of nationalism. When you care about your country more than any other country, you can do great things, which America hasn't been that way in a long time.
There's exactly one place on the planet that is allowed to have ethno-religious nationalism, and they accomplish amazing things because of
Yeah,
it.
imagine if
The
we
rest of
were
us aren't allowed to
Imagine
have
if we were fully focused on optimizing America. We would do stuff like that all the time.
Well, I don't know. It was a very amazing intelligence operation, which raises more questions about the intelligence failure on October 7. But I don't want to be the wet blanket on that one.
All right, we're on list
all
now.
right.
all that to say, Tommy Robinson he's a martyr. If I were him, I would never have gone back.
That's what I think too.
I would have maintained a vocal bullhorn, maybe like Assange in an embassy somewhere. But Tommy knows what he's doing, and Godspeed and God bless him. And I hope
There's a saying that a sheep will never understand the heart of a lion when it comes to bravery. Sometimes people do brave things regardless of motive, everything, that you will never understand.
Is that the saying? I thought it was a lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinion of sheep.
Well,
Same thing.
I like that though. That was
It's
cool.
better.
That
well,
was
the best one yet is from the movie Colors with Robert Duvall and Penn. And Sean Penn is talking to Robert Duvall, and he says, "Hey, telling the story. No, it was Duvall telling Penn, a Papa Bull and a baby bull are at the top of a mountain, and the baby bull looks down at the valley of cows and says, 'Hey, Pops, let's run down and procreate with one of those cows.' And the dad says, 'No, let's walk down and procreate with all of them.'"
Yes.
So that might have been more the approach that Tommy Robinson could have taken, but we'll see where it goes.
So
But
here at Valuetainment, we rely very heavily on lion metaphors. So, Amy, that explains the confusion. It's any number of them that could have been thrown around.